So, yeah, the big question, where J.J. McCarthy goes, that's a huge question. Minnesota Vikings seems like a logical choice. Minnesota moving up to get J.J. McCarthy, that would be something. Pair him with Justin Jefferson, that's a real dynamic duo for years to come. Jefferson, because that would be a decision, that would be a pick close to my heart. You watch Justin Jefferson tear it up in that 2019 National Championship team, and then you look at J.J. McCarthy leading Michigan to a national championship team. So two college stars who are guys who Jefferson has established himself as an NFL star, and then J.J. McCarthy has the potential to do that. A dynamic connection. J.J. McCarthy gets a guy that can make plays outside of structure, something Kirk Cousins didn't do. So yeah, those are both got that would be a really nice pairing right there. But yeah, you look at we'll kind of shift here. The defensive tackle group is strong. Byron Murphy is a guy I like out of Texas. Murphy is explosive off the line of scrimmage, and I did not really expect this guy to really burst onto the scene this season. He had a really solid year last year, but if you look at, this is kind of, I guess, this kind of more relates to Texas' success, but if Texas was going to do something special this season, you knew a guy like Byron Murphy would have to have a season like he did, because they need it. Texas, that's one thing they've struggled for a long time, is number one, developing offensive linemen. The way Sarkisian's offense is, they had enough weapons where that not having a strong offensive line is okay, but the development of the defensive line was so key. Byron Murphy, and then Tavondre Sweat's another draft-eligible guy that you should keep in mind. So those are both guys, two guys out of Texas, really strong players at the defensive tackle position. Byron Murphy, a really good player. Byron Murphy considered the number one defensive tackle. Yeah, the linebacker group not getting a lot of buzz right now. Junior Colson from Michigan is a guy. Like Edgerrin Cooper, a guy from Texas A&M, is a guy that has grown on me. I like his highlights. I like his ability to blitz. I think he's a guy that will hit you, and got pretty good size. Texas A&M, also kind of like Texas struggling to develop defensive linemen over the years. It's interesting that Texas A&M has a linebacker that's being discussed as one of the top draft eligible, because it seems like Texas A&M has struggled to really develop a linebacker for a long time. You got to go all the way back to Von Miller, and even Von Miller was more of a rush linebacker, not a true in the box Mike linebacker. So yeah, Edgerrin Cooper really changing that for Texas A&M. I don't think he'll go first round, but he's a guy that could go high in this draft. But yeah, the biggest talk is, I think the draft is really going to get exciting when Marvin Harrison goes, because a lot of people, there's a debate where Marvin Harrison should go: Arizona, New England. So there's several teams obviously would love Marvin Harrison, and when he goes, I think that's going to be really exciting. That team's going to know they got a really terrific wide receiver. And then, yeah, Malik Neighbors too, where Malik Neighbors goes, that'll be fascinating. Neighbors, such a special talent, and the Giants seem like a possible explanation the Giants seem like a team Malik Neighbors would really fit into. So, yeah, I like Malik Neighbors a lot, and him and Marvin Harrison, I think, are going to be really special talents in the National Football League. Rome Odunze too. But yeah, the cornerback's getting a lot of talk right now. I kind of did my quick cornerback rankings. I had Terrion Arnold number 1, Quinyon Mitchell number 2, and then I would actually have Cooper DeJean number 3, Nate Wiggins 4, probably Kool-Aid 5. I guess I haven't really gone too deep on the corners. There's just a lot of the corners. It's really fun to talk about the top guys, especially this year. I think the top end talent is really special. Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold. So yeah, a lot of really good corners, and especially the top two guys getting a lot of buzz, especially at this point in the draft process. Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold. But yeah, the safety unit not really getting as much buzz. Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota is a guy that people like. He's seen as the consensus number 1 safety. I don't think, kind of like Edgerrin Cooper, kind of like the linebacker group, I think it's far-fetched that we'll see a safety get drafted first round, but it is possible, though. And Tyler Nubin if there was a guy to make a strong case for one to go first round, it is Tyler Newman. Think about Tyler Newman, Edgerrin Cooper are kind of similar. Edgerrin Cooper, the consensus top linebacker by most, and then Tyler Newman, the consensus top safety. They're both guys that don't necessarily have a couple, like one or two elite traits that wow you, but they do everything really well. I think that's why they're really standing out in a weekend class, is because like Edgerrin Cooper, like he can blitz, he can hit you, he can pursue, he's got good enough burst, he's got solid burst. So there's a lot of things to like about Edgerrin Cooper, and he's such a good all around player. I think that's what's propelled him to be the number one linebacker. And then you look at Tyler Newman, and Tyler Newman can cover, can tackle, will hit you, will pursue, can create interceptions. So a lot of things good, but not really necessarily elite traits. So I think that's what just a lot of good things they do has really kind of propelled them to be the number one player at their respective, or the number one, seen as the number one consensus player at their respective positions. But yeah, JJ McCarthy is going to be so fascinating. I think he'll be a polarizing guy in the NFL, and he fits that narrative of a guy that people are just going to follow closely. Like you look at Trevor Lawrence, people follow Trevor Lawrence so closely because he won a national championship at Clemson, phenomenal record, big time recruit out of high school. Same story with JJ McCarthy, big time 5-star recruit out of high school, won a national championship, won a national championship in college, didn't lose a lot of games, and then now in the NFL has a chance to go to maybe not an ideal situation and a chance to really be followed closely as a rookie and have a fan base and a team counting on him to really take a franchise to a not just a winning record, but potentially the playoffs and then down the road a possible Super Bowl. So that's the thing. It's always fun. People always like to follow the Trevor Lawrence, the Justin Fields, the Deshaun Watsons, and now J.J. McCarthy, guys that, and even Tim Tebow, Colt McCoy, guys that didn't have the best NFL career. It's always fun to follow those guys just because people watched them in college for so many years, and then people that are NFL guys and the non-college guys, they still hear those names just by word of mouth and just because they don't live under a rock. So I think that's what's cool about J.J. McCarthy, and that might be what's getting him a bump right now, is just because people, J.J. McCarthy has winning a national championship really just gets you that buzz, and it really can help build up that hype. And that's the thing, as much as the NFL people try to block out the noise and not really listen to Johnny Smith down the street or the NFL consensus media, it's hard not to ignore the noise of J.J. McCarthy. Like, you can't tell me that the Vikings organization and the Vikings GM have not heard about J.J. McCarthy. Like, that'd be far-fetched to believe that they have not heard the hype around J.J. McCarthy. So J.J. McCarthy has a chance to go to Minnesota, or has a chance to go to a team really high, a team that, or a lot of people believe that a team's going to trade up and get him. So J.J. McCarthy, opportunity to go to maybe a not as ideal fit as Michigan and try to see how much he can win, how much he can succeed. So Denver, Minnesota, both not really strong franchises at the moment, but franchises that have the potential a year or two now where they really could get back up and rolling. Like I think Minnesota is maybe 2 years away from being a Super Bowl contender. You look at Minnesota's not a great roster, but it's not such a poor situation that it's not so bad of a situation where you can't envision J.J. McCarthy turning it around. Not that, I guess, like, even if McCarthy went to the Bears, like, that would be less ideal than Minnesota. But that wouldn't be like a whole lot tougher, but it would be harder to, you feel like that's a tougher situation. You just, like, Minnesota is just not I guess I'm trying to, like, Chicago's not necessarily a dumpster fire, but Minnesota is, they're not a good team, but they are far from a dumpster fire. I think that's kind of the key when you look at, it's like when Cam Newton went to Carolina. I know we're going years back, but you look at, like, Carolina was far from a dumpster fire. Even though they were coming off a poor season. They had kind of moved on, like Jake Delhomme had gotten older. I think he was retired. But you look at, they were a poor team, but they weren't a bad organization. Like, you look at, a lot of times Cleveland was drafting with the number one pick. It was a dumpster fire. There's a lot of years I can't really think of can't really think of too many off the top of my head, but you look at there's teams where they had the number one pick and they're just a complete dumpster fire. But yeah, Minnesota, even though it's not a good team right now, they are far from a dumpster fire, and it's certainly not a bad situation for J.J. McCarthy to go to. But yeah, Drake May to Washington seems like the consensus. To me, feel like there's got to be one surprise in the top 5. Like, I think, like, I've really hammered home, I think New England should just take Marvin Harrison. I think they need a quarterback? Yes. But, like, Marvin Harrison is going to solve a lot of issues. And you know you can just have it. You can hang your head high knowing you can walk out of day one holding your head high knowing we got a playmaker and we got at least a good football player. Like, how many, like, that's the thing with New England. Like, you go back a couple drafts ago and they took the kid out of Chattanooga, what's worked out, but it's like Cole Strange. And that's, ironically, it was a strange pick. That's a problem with New England. Like, too many times they've walked out of drafts and you're like, as a fan, can you really be confident? Like, the Cole Strange pick is one of those that, yes, ironically, it is a strange pick, but it's one of those picks where you're kind of like, okay, you know, this guy probably could help our offensive line. It filled a need at the time, but is it like I guess the bottom line is it a potential home run pick? Marvin Harrison is a potential home run pick. Now you can go down you can have the argument, how much does a wide receiver help you? And then you can also have the other, and then that debate can be dragged on also by adding the fact that you don't take a receiver top 3. So there's a lot of counter arguments to why you shouldn't take Marvin Harrison at 3, but sometimes taking risks is important in life, but sometimes just playing it safe. You can argue it's not even playing it safe, but we'll just say at the very least this is playing it safe. You could say in this situation, playing it safe may be the most beneficial from you, because you talk about how, like we just talked about, Minnesota is not a dumpster, not necessarily a good team, but not a dumpster fire. I think the same can be said with New England. It's not a good team, but it's far from a dumpster fire. So if you're a average team that's far from a dumpster fire, that's also thirsting for offensive firepower, and you are in the market for quarterback, but also if you miss on a quarterback, do you take a step further back offensively? So why not take something that you can guarantee? You look at New England, you're like, we should have a solid defense this year. Our offense was atrocious last year. We could take Drake May at 3, but then our board says that Drake May be our, like, if Williams and Daniels goes 1 and 2, Drake May could be their 3rd, 4th quarterback. So do we take our 3rd quarterback, or do we take a receiver who people are calling a generational talent? Some people are saying, mind you, it's media driven. Media people are saying he's the best receiver I've scouted. I saw one video that. Now, granted, that guy may not have the highest qualifications to say that, but the fact that people are saying those words, and Mel Kiper has, a lot of people have Marvin Harrison as the best player in this draft, the number 2 player in this draft. So take a guy who a generational, or take your number 3 quarterback and fill a need, or take a generation or potentially generational talent at wide receiver, a guy that's at the very least going to be a good player, most likely could be a Hall of Fame gold jacket type of player. So that's just, I don't know. Those are just kind of, just food for thought, stuff to think about with why I think New England should take Marvin Harrison. I totally understand the argument not to take him. I understand the argument to trade down, but that's the thing. People always say trade down. Trading down is not as easy as people think, because you obviously, to trade down, you need a trade partner. So that's the thing. New England, and then it goes back to, like I just talked about, like New England, like, if Drake May's their number 3 quarterback, and he's seen as, like, a lot of, not just he might be New England's number 3 quarterback. If a lot of teams have Drake May as their number 3 quarterback, who's going to want to trade up with New England to number 3 to get their number 3 quarterback? Obviously, it could be a quarterback needy team. It could maybe the Broncos, maybe the Vikings, but that's the thing. Like, that's why New England's kind of just in a weird spot. That's why I just go back to, I know I've hammered this point home, but that's why I just go back to take Marvin Harrison. Why not just get a good football player? I think that's the thing people forget about the NFL draft. If you want to talk about trade down, get draft capital, do this. All these moves are great, but at the end of the day, what is the goal of the NFL draft? Draft the best possible players. It was like the debate when the Raiders traded Khalil Mack. It's like, yeah, they got what, 3 first-round picks, 3 first-round picks and a second round, or whatever they got. They got a pretty good haul, or the Jalen Ramsey trade. There's always that, there's always big-time players you can get big-time hauls for. But the thing is, like, the goal of having not just a first-round pick, but a high first-round pick is to draft players like Khalil Mack and like Jalen Ramsey and like Marvin Harrison. So that's the thing, like New England. And the thing, like, New England fans will say, well, we'll probably be bad next year, but are you going to be top 3 bad next year? So, I don't know. But yeah, I think, and then Arizona probably, you feel like if New England doesn't take Marvin Harrison, Arizona's going to take Marvin Harrison. But yeah, Marvin Harrison, I could go on all day about him. Stud, beast, monster. This guy, just an absolute freak. Tormented Big Ten teams the last couple of years. Even in the losses to Michigan, he was really strong, just making contested catches. He makes contested catches like no one's there. That's what's crazy about Marvin Harrison. And then Malik Neighbors too. I think Malik Neighbors to the Giants just seems like a satisfying pick for the New York Giants. I think that's one thing I talk about. I think this draft's going to be very satisfying. Like the Arizona Cardinals getting Marvin Harrison is like just what the doctor ordered, a weapon for Kyler Murray, even though Kyler Murray, his future may not be certain in Arizona, but yeah, another weapon for him. Why not? And then the New York Giants, a team that's had their woes of signing free agent receivers and drafting wide receivers. Hence, Kenny Galladay, example Kadarius Toney, Wan'Dale Robinson has been okay, but he's never really developed into a star. So, a Giants, a team that's had their woes of getting wide receivers, getting a guy like Malik Neighbors, that's going to clear up a lot of that'll put to rest those issues. So. And yeah, Malik Neighbors, I compare his game to, it's like an avalanche of snow. Like if you're in front of it, that snow is just going to come down on you. Like Malik Neighbors, when he gets going, there's just no stopping this guy. It's just like there was drives, he'd have 3 or 4 catches, just break off big, and they were for big chunks of yardage. And the defense is just like, what? They don't even know what hit him. Like I said, it's like an avalanche of snow just hitting you out of nowhere. That was Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors is just an absolute freak, and you can tell this is one of those guys that just relishes the opportunity to just dominate, get in a rhythm, and just completely change a football game. That's all those things are key to Malik Neighbors' game. But yeah, I kind of want to talk about the corners some more. So yeah, Nate Wiggins was a guy I called. I like Nate Wiggins' tape in the summer. Nate Wiggins, such an athletic guy, ran a really good 40 time, 4.2. Was it 4.28? So yeah, Nate Wiggins, just a very good talent. And it's crazy Nate Wiggins being talked about maybe the 3rd, 4th corner. But he's a guy I think one team's going to really like for his man coverage ability. I mean, you look at that Florida State tape, he really shut down Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman. So, yeah, Nate Wiggins, an excellent football player. Jared Verse, too, from Florida State. I'm not as high on Jared Verse compared to some of the other edge rushers, but I think Jared Verse has a bright future in the NFL. I think there's certainly some things to like about Jared Verse. I would say he's probably my number 5 edge rusher. Like I ranked him number 1, Dallas Turner. Number 2, Laiatu Latu. 3, Darius Robinson. I was tempted to put Darius Robinson number 2. Darius Robinson and Laiatu Latu are so close. Laiatu Latu is just, like you talk about satisfying, fulfilling. Watching Laiatu Latu is just satisfying. It's like Laiatu Latu, I've kind of, let me try to articulate the best way I can. It's kind of like watching, he's not really like a guy that just, like the get off the line of scrimmage isn't like Von Miller, or it isn't like some of the best, like Lawrence Taylor. Like the burst off the snap isn't phenomenal, but his tape is kind of like if you put a high school kid up against like elementary kids or middle schoolers, and he's just physically stronger, and just more imposing. That's what Laiatu Latu is. It's just like you can tell his strength is just a serious problem for opposing offensive linemen. And the amount of disruption in this guy's game is incredible. And he's so good against the run. And he's a guy that just kind of sneaky smooth in his pass rush and just gets the quarterback quicker than people think. Like, I watched the tape against USC, and that was probably the most dominant game without lighting up the stat sheet. And what I mean by that is there was so many times Caleb Williams was flushed. And Braylon Trice did this too to USC. I think that what was key in Washington and UCLA winning. Even though Latu, I guess I'll just stick with Latu now, but Trice did this as well. Even though Latu is not always getting the quarterback, the disruption in just the presence of him getting to the quarterback really played a factor in the quarterback's psyche. You can tell in a lot of the inaccurate throws that were rushed, flushing the pocket. Same thing with Braylon Trice. That's why I put Trice at 4. So Darius Robinson 3-4. Trice and Latu, even though they're guys that, if you look at their stats, like if you didn't know anything about them and you knew that you heard they were good players and you looked at their stats, you'd think, okay, yeah, probably second round guys, might be okay in the NFL, probably start off as a backup, maybe eventual starter, probably that was the preferable label for them. But when you watch their tape, you're just like with Braylon Trice, you're like, man, this guy is a this guy is a problem to block. Laiatu Latu, this guy is a problem to block. Like you look at opposing offensive linemen, if you hooked them up to Robert De Niro's lie detector test, and not a lot of guys like to admit this because some guys have ego, some guys don't want to admit this, but if you ask offensive linemen, what was it like going against Laiatu Latu and Braylon Trice? Some may give an honest answer, mind you, but others will not want to admit it. I think some of them you would detect if they said that it was easy or it wasn't that hard going against those guys, I think the polygraph thing would be going crazy. You can just tell, you can tell when a part of scouting a defensive lineman is seeing the distress he puts on opposing offensive linemen. You could tell with Laiatu Latu and Braylon Trice, the offensive linemen were in distress. They were in uncomfortable situations. So that's the thing I love about why I love Braylon Trice and Laiatu Latu. And even though I got Trice as my number 4 edge rusher, I still love him. It's just how highly I think of Darius Robinson and Laiatu Latu and Turner. You could tell Braylon Trice and Laiatu Latu, you could tell that they were giving people problems. And those are both guys in the NFL where you can tell offensive linemen may not give up some highlight sacks going against those guys, but those will be guys where offensive linemen be like, oh man, I got to go against that Trice guy or I got to go against that Latu guy. It's just that's going to be tough. And it's kind of like it's like the kid in sports you play against who's not the best athlete. Now, these guys are still good athletes, mind you, but it's like the kid you go against in sports, like an opposing team, and he's not the best player, but the guy is just relentless. Especially in basketball, if you're just a relentless defender, he's just always in your face, it can really wear you down. That's going to be Braylon Trice and Laiatu Latu. Those guys are going to be relentless. And opposing offense, I think those are going to be guys who probably could win. In the NFL, there's so many close games. Those guys probably can win their NFL team maybe 1 or 2 games just because late in the game, the offensive lineman just gets lazy and they beat them. Or not even lazy, the guy just a little bit tired, and here comes Trice's strength again, or here comes Laiatu Latu's strength again. So I think those guys, that's what really, those are some of the best ways to describe Laiatu Latu and Braylon Trice. They're just going to be a problem for opposing offensive linemen, and it's going to be a long day for the linemen they have to go against, and running backs too. Whoever has to try to block these guys, I actually genuinely feel for them. That is a serious problem. But yeah, the wide receiver group, it's easy to talk about some of the top guys, and it's easy to forget about some of the other guys too. I say other guys, I don't mean that with any disrespect, but Xavier Worthy, a good player too. A.D. Mitchell, a really good player. Some other receiver, Roman Wilson out of Michigan. You talk about guys that are sleepers in this NFL draft. Roman Wilson's that guy. Roman Wilson, a guy not really utilized, kind of like Byron Murphy's story with Texas. Roman Wilson, a guy that not really utilized fully until like this past year, but a guy that was consistently pretty good for Michigan and then really broke out this year when they needed him most. They needed a receiver to really step up and make some plays, especially like he did in the playoff game against like the semifinal against Alabama. So Roman Wilson certainly got to keep an eye on. And yeah, A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell, though, a guy that concerns me. I don't want to make any speculations because I obviously don't know A.D. Mitchell personally, but the transfer thing and him only, he did show out in big games, but him not being consistent kind of concerns me. Same with Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy, I have my concerns as well too. Like the point I made with Xavier Worthy is like if you knew Xavier Worthy ran 4.21 and you knew he played 3 years at Texas and was good. Like if you knew those two things, like you would probably be pretty excited. But like you'd also kind of like ask yourself, shouldn't he have dominated more? Shouldn't this guy be like the next Tyreek Hill? So yeah, Xavier Worthy, certainly a lot of things to like, and there's certainly upside there. But obviously comparing guys to Tyreek Hill is a high standard. But also, like, the NFL is always thirsting for guys like that. That's the thing. Just because it's hard to live up the expectations of being Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson, why not always have high expectations when you're drafting? That's the thing. Like, the team, like, if New England or Arizona takes Marvin Harrison, do you think they're thinking, maybe he could just be a good player? Screw that. Maybe he can be Justin Jefferson, or maybe he can be better than Jefferson, or maybe better than Tyreek Hill, or the team taking Jaden Daniels, Jaden Daniels being compared to Lamar Jackson. Maybe teams are thinking, teams aren't just thinking maybe he can be as good as Lamar Jackson, maybe a little lesser version. No, maybe he could be better than Lamar Jackson. Maybe he's a more dynamic runner. Maybe his change of direction is better. Maybe he's going to continue to improve as a passer. Maybe there's a little bit more meat on the bone for him to get better and develop and continue to envelop his passing game. So. And then that's the thing with J.J. McCarthy. It's like, I guess the optimism is, or the pessimism, if you will, with J.J. McCarthy is, well, there was times he didn't really shred opposing defenses, but also like Michigan, you got to understand he didn't really need to do that, number one. And then number two, he just, like part of the how the Penn State game where he didn't throw the ball in the second half, it was kind of like the game flow. You don't need, like, he didn't need to do that. So that's the thing. And McCarthy, I did have that concern, but I did have that concern that he's doesn't really light it up with a bunch of deep ball throws, and his mid-range accuracy is good. I don't think it's elite. I have those slight concerns, but he's shown the ability to do that though. That's the thing. You look at, like, this might not be the best example because Malcolm Rodriguez has kind of fallen off a little bit, but it's kind of one of those things where Malcolm Rodriguez, people talked about the issue with him is he needed to be kept clean in the NFL. But like the thing is, he showed at least a solid ability to get off of blocks. So that should So if a guy can do something in college, it can use it. It translates to the NFL. J.J. McCarthy has shown the ability to complete deep throws and can consistently hit mid-range throws. So the ability is there. So that's the thing. If a guy can do it in college, he can do it in the NFL. Too many people think, well, he's just okay, or he's just decent at it in college, so he's going to get worse. So it's going to be worse in the NFL. It doesn't work like that. A lot of times, if a guy can do something like at a solid to good level, he'll do it at a solid to good level in the NFL. It doesn't just magically get worse. Now, is there exceptions where that happens, where a guy that's good at something and maybe in the NFL he's just solid at? Is there exceptions to that where that is the case? Yes, but for the most part, if a guy can do something in college, he can do it in the NFL. So just about at 30 minutes here, guys. I'm going to wrap with that. Thanks for tuning in to the Brant Partial Show. Stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.